Thank you. The title of this talk today is Michael Parenti, The Room, and the Sound of Democracy. I'm going to try to explain why talks like this are vital to a democracy, and show how Michael Parenti, whom I have a great affection for, not only because he was talking about the problems we face and what to do about them, decades before anyone else really put a name with the face of our despair, but also we share a birthday. So I think like him, and I think you should too, if you want answers put plainly and simply to the disastrous policies and monstrous people who run these odious institutions. Okay. There's a difference between watching something and going somewhere. Going means leaving your house, sitting next to strangers, agreeing, even briefly, to share the same air. The lights hum, the chairs are uncomfortable, the microphone squeals before anyone speaks. That used to be normal. That used to matter. An assembly hall wasn't just a venue. It was a test, not of intelligence, of commitment. You couldn't pause it. You couldn't multitask it. You couldn't disappear without being noticed. When a speaker talked, you weren't just listening. You were being seen, listening. Collective attention created accountability, and accountability made ideas heavier.
I put together some thoughts about how we have to talk to the people who live in darkness, and there are many of them. The battle is for their consciousness. The battle is for teaching them what their own self-interest is. I tell liberal audiences often when I get to talk to them, they'll say things like, or some student will say, well, they don't care what we think. They don't pay attention to what we think. And I say, no, my friend, pobrecito, no, that's the only thing about you that they care about. The only thing about you that they care about is what you're thinking. They don't care what you eat, or if you do eat or you don't eat. They don't care if you're eating poison food. They don't care if you're breathing bad air. They don't care where you go, where you're sitting, what you're doing. They just care about what you think. And every day when they get together, they say, what's today's agenda? What's the theme we push today? What do we do here? How is their reactions? What do the polls say about that? What is this, that? Because they know something that many of our fellow citizens don't know, which is that their power, their immense power, rests on our backs. And that when we shrug and shake it, they might go flying and falling off on their butts. And that's what we've got to remember, that this is a struggle for the consciousness of people. This is a struggle with, it's a very difficult fight. This is what I've given my life to, and sometimes you're punished when you give your life to that kind of struggle. You know, people who talk like this, what I just said a minute ago, you don't get tenure at the universities, you don't get invitations and the like.
Michael Parenti didn't beam in through fiber optics. He showed up in union halls, college basements, community centers with folding chairs and humming fluorescent lights. The sound was never perfect. The seats were never comfortable. But the people were there. And so was he.
And when you start doing that, when you start saying, I started saying worse things. It wasn't only opposing the war and bemoaning the symptoms of an unjust society, but I began to then doing a very dangerous thing, which was analyze those things as to whose interests were involved and what's going on. The thing you can never get when you watch those Sunday TV news talk shows or evening news or any other news, you can never get them to get into that. And so that's what I sort of wanted to do here today. I wanted to give you a very analytical talk. This looks like a real up crowd and you're in for a rouser, but I got a more analytic talk tonight, if that's okay. I know you, rascals.
If you watch enough Parenti talks, you notice something immediately. The microphone never works. Feedback, static, someone crouched at the podium adjusting cables like it's a bomb. And Parenti never stops. He leans in. He jokes. He keeps going. Which feels perfect. Because his ideas were never designed for clean systems. They were designed for rooms like this.
I'm going to talk about, if I can get the microphone sort of away so that I could find my notes here. There's always an adjustment problem. Don't touch this one. This yours? We're all slaves of technology here, aren't we? Against the Soviet. Did I do something wrong here? Just wanted to get this. Move it back a little bit. Just move it back. That's it. Hear me okay? The topic. This microphone in front of me. Can you all hear me all right? Back there in the cheap seats, you can hear me. Okay. I put together some thoughts about how we have to. That's kind of the subject. There's no amplification. What's happened to it? Is that better? Oh, when I move that, is that? It's got to be up as far. He's always Mr. Values. He's always. You see, there's something wrong with this microphone, isn't there? Oh man, I'm gonna have to talk like that. You see, this is. When they check the sound, they go, checking. Yeah, this works, this plays fine. But nobody stands like this and talks, is it? Gore! What a joke. Thank you very much. This microphone has a mind of its own. Thank you very much. Can we get a microphone that works? Can you hear me back in the last row? There we go. Without the hum. No, if you make it louder, it gets a hum. There's no way. They often, when I go to on these talks, they always say, "Do you need a PowerPoint? Do you need slides?" I said, "No. All I need is water, and a sound system that works." And sometimes I get the water, you know. And at home, what do we have? We've got public hospitals closing. We got libraries cutting back their hours. We got goddamn sound systems that don't even work. Now you know why I'm angry. David, you can't move this at all? Just an inch? I mean, just getting claustrophobic here. Okay.
Michael Parenti didn't teach conclusions. He taught a method. Follow the power. Systematic oppression. Follow the money. Cui bono. Watch who benefits. The elites. Not you or I. That method still works today because the structures didn't disappear. They just rebranded. Capitalism didn't soften. Empire didn't retire. They just learned to speak in nicer fonts. You don't need conspiracies when incentives are aligned. You don't need villains when institutions do the work automatically. And he taught that in rooms, not feeds.
And here I'm kind of paraphrasing John Maynard Keynes, because he said this too about free market capitalism. The free market mythology, it argues that the most ruthless, selfish, opportunistic, greedy, calculating plunderers applying the most heartless measures in cold-blooded pursuit of corporate interests and wealth accumulation will produce the best results for all of us. Through something called the invisible hand.
When the mic failed, something else turned on. People leaned forward. They listened hard. They looked at each other. You weren't consuming information. You were participating in a moment. Collective attention isn't efficient, it's fragile. And that fragility is exactly what made it powerful.
I mean, the people are the very stuff of power, just that others have been coming in, extracting it, refining it, and using it for their own profit. I like that. That's a pretty good metaphor, huh?
Somewhere along the way, we traded gathering for viewing. Now the talk comes to you. Perfect audio, perfect lighting, perfect isolation. Online videos are incredible. They scale, they spread. But they don't ask much of you. You can mute discomfort, pause disagreement, close the tab the moment it gets hard. We gained access, we lost friction. And friction was where solidarity lived.
Democratic gains have usually been won against the opposition of the wealthy and the powerful, and not with their encouragement. It would be inaccurate to credit the rich landowners, merchants, industrialists, and financiers with the genius of democracy, their system of capitalism with the genius of democracy, when in fact they have opposed almost every egalitarian democratic reform, be it universal suffrage, free speech, civil liberties, women's rights, civil rights, collective bargaining, social security, occupational safety, a safe and clean environment. You can go on. Rather than buttressing democracy, free market capitalism poses, with its immense concentrations of wealth and power, it poses a serious obstacle and threat to popular rule.
When fewer people gather, power relaxes. Because isolated agreement is harmless. Collective agreement is not. History doesn't fear opinions. It fears rooms full of people who realize they're not alone. Parenti kept showing up because he understood this instinctively. Democracy doesn't happen online by accident. It happens when people know each other.
Those of us who want to know the truth about what the ruling class does in the national security state, we're not conspiracy theorists, we're conspiracy actualists. And that desire of people mobilizing to expose unaccountable power, there's another name for it. It's not conspiracy theory. There's another name for it. It's called democracy. And there are some people up there who wouldn't know democracy if it hit them right in the face. Their whole task is to evade and deny and get around troublesome democratic forces. But democracy is what we're about, and let's have more of it.
Recently, something interesting has happened. Speakers aren't filling assembly halls as much. They're filling bars. You buy a ticket, you buy a drink. You listen to someone explain the world between sips. It's a half lecture, half stand-up. A half group therapy for people who still want to think together. And maybe that's not a downgrade. Maybe that's an adaptation.
That self-interest can be defined in different ways and according to class interests. We've got to be aware of that. We've got to be aware that people also are capable of noble, gallant, courageous, and generous behavior, but they're also capable of vicious, mean-spirited, murderously egocentric behavior also. I think they are. And I think that all those, given certain circumstances, all those things can be treated as innate tendencies and proclivities. My view of human nature is not a very glowing one myself. I believe, along with the great American theologian, I know you've heard me say this before, some of you, the great American theologian Woody Allen, who said that maybe God exists, but he's an underachiever. I mean, it's a botched job. Imagine being omnipotent and producing this: earthquakes, plagues, tornadoes, and human beings, the way with all the capacities to do the good, but also the very evil things they do. It's a botched job. I mean, if I were omnipotent, I could have done a much better job. I'm not omnipotent, and I think I could do a better job. I tell you one thing, I'd take more than 6 days to do it then.
But something is still gone. Bars are intimate, but temporary. Online videos are permanent, but lonely. The old assembly hall lived in between. It wasn't entertainment. It wasn't content. It was rehearsal. Rehearsal for democracy. Rehearsal for disagreement. Rehearsal for showing up even when the sound was bad.
It's the right-wingers who use religion in the way that they do, which is to avoid political economic issues and just look for pie in the sky, focus on sin, attack feminism, attack gays, conjure up irrelevant issues to get people frightened about and let them forget, convince them that their problems are due to the liberals and to all these, and to the godless people and all that sort of thing. You know, that Pat Robertson kind of religious brand of religious politics, it gets very well financed. Another example, of course, is Pat Buchanan. You know, remember we were talking about his talk on at the Republican National Convention, where he talked about white America and the foreigners and the strangers in the land taking over. And you know, I thought that comment that Molly Ivins made was right, that a lot of people were a little shocked by that speech, but it sounded much better in the original German. Okay.
The microphone was supposed to amplify Parenti's voice. It rarely did, because amplification is never neutral. Some voices glide through systems. Others fight static just to exist. Parenti didn't wait for better equipment. He worked around it, which is exactly what he taught. If the system isn't built for you, you don't go quiet. You speak anyway.
Can't hear. Okay, I wondered who that man was creeping up like that. Okay. Can you hear me better now? Is it all right? It seems to be out of range, actually. This microphone has a mind of its own. All right. Now, that nature of expansion really affects the nature of, it's an important imperative, because it means capitalism also can never stay home. It goes abroad. If you ever saw the film Controlling Interest, there's a corporate president who says, those corporations that stayed regional in New England years ago and decided not to go national, we can't even remember their names. They died. We had to go national. And those of us who are now national know we have to go international. We have to invest abroad. So one of the laws of capitalist motion and development is this inexorable expansion. And that means expansion into an expropriation of the third world. A process that's been going on for about 400 years, perpetrated by the Portuguese, the Spaniards, the Dutch, the Belgians, the French, the English, and most recently, most successfully, most impressively, by the Americans. That is by the ruling classes of these countries, not by the ordinary people. The ordinary people simply paid the costs of empire. The ordinary people simply sent their sons off to die on the plains of India or in the jungles of the Congo or in Latin America, wherever else.
Michael Parenti spent his life explaining how systems distort voices. So maybe it's fitting his voice always came through static. What we're losing isn't just lectures. It's the practice of being together without an exit button. An assembly hall, basement, bar. Truth doesn't need perfect sound. It needs people willing to show up and lean in.
I knew there were this many people who might want to hear me. I didn't know there were this many who had $10 and willing to pay it. I've always thought that the ideas and issues and struggles that we waged were sacred, and here we now have visible evidence of it in these august surroundings, which, much to my surprise, is a Methodist church, but it looks like the Catholic churches of my childhood. But oh, I shouldn't even say that with all the stained glass window. So I feel kind of at home here, and I hope you do, even if the acoustics are impossible.
So here's the ask. Not a like, not a subscribe. Go somewhere. It doesn't have to be an assembly hall. It doesn't have to be a bar. It doesn't even have to be political. Just sit in a room with other people. Listen to someone think out loud. Stay when it's uncomfortable. Talk afterward. Because democracy doesn't survive on agreement. It survives on practice. And practice requires bodies, rooms, bad sound systems. If Michael Parenti taught us anything, it's that ideas don't change the world alone. People do. Together. Through static.
But ultimately, the worth of a system must be measured by a truly substantive democratic standard. Does it serve the public investor or the private plunderer? Does it serve the needs of the many or the greed of the few? We need drastic reforms, revolutionary reformist measures for a more democratic society, one that is economically productive, ecologically safe, and socially just. And that's what democracy is all about. Thank you.